Hey everybody. Hey everybody. I just read something on my email, an email from a YouTube creator saying that is your first initial greeting, hey everybody. That's how everybody seems to greet their audience, whoever they are. So so I think I've made these connections before, but probably not in its most condensed version regarding viruses and growth. Okay. And so we had to understand and pick apart electricity and piezoelectricity and transducers, and then understand, yes, that your pineal gland is a transducer. It is the antenna to the universe. We had to understand that viruses are transducers. They have their own electricity, their own force. They obviously need a host. They are the intelligence which drives then the blueprint of biodiversity's body. That's why it's called environment. VIRON is the middle word in between the whole word of environment. And then we know that if you're next to a transformer or you're next to some electrical grid that it says, oh, be careful, cancer, because cancer is only growth. And so viruses, now that we know, I mean, not that now that we know, we've been knowing this, but it now needs to be made the connection with the words so close together that you can't help but see the association. And so that's why understanding where you put your words, how you place your words, is going to then give people the actual intention and get to the point very quickly. Or you can add a bunch of adjectives and a bunch of qualifiers in between nouns, and you can confuse people. And so, but I had to figure out, okay, all the connections, which means that you study all the different components that make up the connections. And so, yes, viruses do cause agonist growth antibodies. Okay, again, there are two sides to the immune system. There's the adaptive and the innate, just like the positive and negative integers on a timeline. The agonist antibodies are the pluses. They promote growth. Yes, they can be linked to cancer on a body at a deficit who has been channel blocked. And then the innate immune system is the negative integers, and they are the ones that are the code enforcers. They're the ones that make sure that the blueprint is being adhered to, that there isn't anything extraneous. And if there's something extraneous outside of the blueprint, then it does a search and destroy. Okay, and so I had to find a way to explain that so people get it in the context of things that they're familiar with, just like building, coding, enforcers, OSHA, any kind of enforcement agency says, okay, you can only operate within the parameters of these laws in your community, and if you go outside of that, then we're going to ding you. Okay, that's no different than the antagonist antibodies. And so when we are applied with vectors, okay, these therapeutic vectors, that the activism community is like, oh, well, it says in the insert, it says this, 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 and this. Well, yeah, that is always a possibility on a body at a deficit. I've been watching my Facebook community. I've been watching people in my world, as well as myself and my dog, okay? And yeah, every single time either somebody mutates a variant of some kind of virus in the environment, there is an evolutionary response. And the evolutionary response is based upon your predispositions. So if you're at a deficit and you have a lot of predispositions, then yes, the virus is going to trigger your immune system to promote some kind of growth that maybe your body can't handle because of the amount of predispositions and then the channels that have been blocked from your practices with the allopathic and the holistic. And so that's why they tell people to quit smoking when they've been diagnosed with a tumor or with cancer, because smoking is growth. Smoking is evolution. And back way a long time ago, people were smoking because people were evolving, they were innovating. It helped with innovation. That's why you see some of the great thinkers of the past, they're puffing on their cigars. You look at Einstein puffing on his cigar. I mean, where do you think he got all of his material from? It's because he was able to promote growth in his brain and expand his brain to be able to understand the universe, to be able to articulate it in formulas like E=mc squared. So now that we're at 7 billion people, with so many people who are glitching, who are at a deficit, now we are seeing the system say, okay, what used to be healthy and great for us, right, on a collective level, is now harming because people are at such a deficit they can't afford that much growth, like what happened 100 years ago. And so right now, anything that promotes some kind of evolutionary response is going to be demonized because it's too much energy on bodies that are not up to snuff, that are not up to par. And so you'll see probably way down in the future, which some of you will not survive in the future because of your ways of reacting to evolutionary responses. People are going to understand J juice. Right now, people are not going to understand J juice because, first of all, they don't want to deal with pain. And second of all, it's a lot of evolutionary responses that not everybody's prepared for. Not that they couldn't survive it, but they're just not prepared for it. And so when there's a deficit of people, when there is a need for people, yes, they're going to promote sexual reproduction, of course, but then also they want to keep people alive. And so, we can't afford to have so many people at such a deficit to where our infrastructure fails. And that's why you're seeing the architects of our society really trying to streamline and automate everything so they don't have to rely on a population that may not be alive in the future. Okay? And so they're already looking at the future. They're probably 100 years ahead in the future. And now it's just rolling out what was inevitable, which some of you already know anyways. And so this is the really hard thing to say, not really, but it's a hard thing to comprehend, is that the fact that, yeah, viruses are the agonist, are the ones that promote the agonist antibodies. And then, so viruses promote growth. And then what the pharmaceuticals do is they try to mitigate the exponential growth. Okay. And so that's why the medical system is all about the negative side of it, which I had to understand because it makes them look like they're the demon. That's the thing that people don't understand, is that when people are evolving at such an exponential rate and their bodies can't handle it, yes, the medical system comes in and tries to mitigate that thermodynamics, but the thing is that people die anyways. And a lot of their therapeutics are very temporary, if at all. And it's like, what can you do? There's nothing you can do when we have promoted so much exponential population growth that, we have to depend upon a population. So they go in and they figure out how do they best manage that person's situation. And that's why there is a new thought process on the forefront that most people out there do not understand. The jelly juice, that immortality is just maintaining your existence. It is all about the positive and negatives, integers that are part of physics, that is not just biochemistry or chemistry or biology. Physics is like the forefront when it comes to how your cells work in an environment that is so electrified, because yes, everything is electric. Viruses are electric. The microbiome is electric. Electricity comes in many different forms. It needs different conduits. It could be like a transformer that you see like in a battery pack, or that you see in a CB radio or in a car, or a human is also a transformer, a transducer. Okay. And so we conduct electricity. Metal conducts electricity. Salt is a liquefied form of electricity because it is a mineral that formulated in the rocks for many, 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 many hundreds, thousands, millions of years. And it's so abundant that the oceans are made up of salt. So you'll never, ever be out of salt. Salt is the most prevalent, probably mineral out there. And then it has other minerals like, potassium and magnesium and fluoride. And that's why you see people have an issue with sodium fluoride, because sodium, which is just salt, well, sodium is one aspect of the compound of salt, but when you pair it with fluoride, it energizes the fluoride, so then it makes the fluoride very strong. So salt is a qualifier, and it actually increases strength in whatever your intention is. And so that's why jelly juice is so like crazy for people, because there are people who are experiencing energy that they're not really prepared to deal with, and they've been told the energy that they have experienced through symptoms is something to squelch, something to suppress. And so, but in reality, they have to expend that energy, and they have to bring all their stuff to the surface, and they have to back it up with the food supply. They have to insulate their body. Just simply expending energy is really not worth it if there's nothing to back it up with, if there's nothing to expend it on and have it, trigger a specific purpose. Okay. Again, biotechnology is taking something in its raw form and converting it into something that is purposeful with intention. Okay. And so at this point, it's very difficult for many people to understand this. I mean, I'm looking at binary, non-binary, and binary is the 1 and the zeros. And the non-binary is where it's not either 1 or 0. It doesn't take either side. And even though binary has to do with algorithms in a computer and virtual reality and reality, it also has to do with how people characterize identification, gender identification. And so then me taking up for the other side, of which Dr. Phil got me in trouble because I'm trying to figure out what is the most normal thing, what is natural, what is this. And I didn't know that I was still stuck in the duality complexes that have been promoted all over, everywhere. And so I was like, okay, procreation is only, this and this, but procreation is also mitotic procreation. It can be non-binary. How do you do mitotic non-binary procreation? It's telomere lengthening, that you don't need to have sexual reproduction to reproduce your cells at an exponential level. So as long as it stays within the blueprint of the body. So you're supposed to have binary and non-binary, and that can happen at the micro level, where you're either triggering meiosis, which is sexual reproduction, or you're triggering mitosis, which is asexual reproduction, which is cell generation. And then that also can translate at the macro level, which is then somebody that says, okay, I still want to have all the pleasures of whatever, but I really don't want to create a baby. And that is perfectly fine too. I mean, I was under the impression that these specific things are for a purpose. I mean, they are and they aren't, but the fact that you have hormones that give you different experiences says that, okay, as long as you're able to conjure them up and bring them to surface, and you have an intention and you can train your body to deal with specific hormones in specific ways. So as long as it's not detrimental to your overall, intention, then it's okay, as long as it abides by the laws of life and the laws of your community. Okay. And consent is always going to be first and foremost. And so I had to learn a few things, but I'll tell you what, that pissed off some people, because when I'm writing about breeding people, and people are bred for specific industries, people are bred for specific purposes, it's just like, oh my God, that's like so ungodly in their own way, in a very, very acidic way, the way they respond to me. But I'm used to it. I welcome it. And it gives me data on where they get their information from. And they do eventually tell me that they watch Dr. Phil or something else. And then I get it. I understand where they're coming from. And I'm not mad at them. I mean, I wish they were a bit nicer, but nobody really can control the way they react to things when they really feel something in their heart is so against their belief system. And I get it. I was there too. I even put it out there to mainstream media. But then when I understood that binary and non-binary can cohabitate together, they can actually live amongst each other. So as long as they understand each has a purpose, and they can always exchange the purpose. A non-binary person can still have a meiosis type of situation. All they have to have is the different hormonal, components. And as long as science is able to stabilize it, then who cares, right? And so, and a binary person doesn't have to, actually procreate and have, it through a sexual reproduction. I'm a binary person. I choose not to have kids. Does that make me bad or wrong? No. If a non-binary person wants to have kids, well, let them have kids. And so you're seeing the exchange back and forth, that both sides of that equation that's been always at like this with each other, they're going to realize that we've all been bioengineered on some level. Like we all have. And there is nobody that is more normal than anyone else. If you're able to live and thrive in this society in some way, and maybe you're at a deficit at different levels, whatever it is, you have a diagnosable condition, it can be reversed. You're not stuck to the breeding that was given to you at the initial time of conception and then whatever was told you through nurturing. You always have the ability to change your breeding. And that's the hard thing to get across to people, is the fact that they can change their breeding. How do you do that? Well, you have to change your biochemistry for one. But number two, you have to actually feed your brain with different information. If you are circulating in an echo chamber of which is very one small, tiny little narrow point of view, whether it's in academia or your little social media group that everyone is basically throwing insults about somebody else back and forth, then they're reinforcing their very narrow belief system. And so they're going to be stuck with the initial breeding they were given at the time of their birth, because they haven't given their brain anything more to work from. And so that's how people get stuck in ruts. That's how people get stuck in socioeconomic statuses. That's how people get stuck and pigeonholed in industries that they're not happy in. That these industries are destroying them and they don't realize it, but they don't know anything else because they haven't fed their brain and their body something different to work from. And so Jilly Juice gives you that opportunity to take you're not going to take something out, but you're going to lessen that influence and you're going to bring in more information. That's what evolution is bringing in more information. Viruses bring in more information. When I hang out with different people, I get more information at a micro level. It's not easy. And I was down for 2 weeks dealing with that information, but whatever, I still maintained and still took care of stuff. And so you can always change your station by bringing in new information. And then, you're not taking anything away. You're just adding to it. And then you're choosing what you want to have most at the surface. So if you're a city girl and you move to the country like I did, I still have the city in me. I miss all of the San Francisco. I miss, the diverse food, but now I can't really eat certain foods anymore because it's so heavily spiced. That's like, being drunk. And so, but I miss the activity and the energy of the city. I miss that, but then not really enough for me to go and move out of the country. I mean, I'm in the country, even though I'm in kind of like the city limits, I'm in the freaking country. Ohio is like country. Okay. And so, but I will always have the city in me. I will always have the Silicon Valley suburbs in me, but it's just adding more to my perspective. And that's all Jilly Juice does. It says, okay, if you want to broaden your perspective, get out of your dualistic, narrow thought process, bring in new information, balance out both sides of the argument, understand both sides. I do. And then I realized that's the whole reason why the medical system is the negative, because the viruses are the positive. And that's a takeaway I would not have even came to a conclusion with if it wasn't me just picking apart everything. But that's the thing is why I say that, the medical holistic system, anyone that's in the medical holistic system, they have to realize what they're doing. And that's why I say we don't want to demonize them, but we want to hold them accountable. Why we hold them accountable? Because when you say you want to live and then you're doing things to take away people's life, even though they still want to die at some point, they don't want to die today. But there's new information out there. That's the thing, is that there's new information. Okay, and so if you are the seed of evolution in your community and you've put out there that Jilly Juice is evolution, it promotes growth and it also allows the intelligence to take away what doesn't need to be there, and they still do what they do and they still believe people should die and they don't realize that, you don't have to die, then, and nothing you can really do to hold them accountable, but you can say, okay, you're part of the negative part of the integers. You're taking life and you are actually actively destroying it. Even though, yes, it's about thermodynamics, but if you were to teach people how to heal and seal to begin with, if you were to teach people how to deal with their pain to begin with, you wouldn't be there as a medical holistic person doing what you're doing. And so it all comes down to now finally changing people's ways of looking at pain and the belief systems that people should die. And that does come at a root level of understanding science and biology. And when you have to pay for science and biology to get a formal education in a perspective of promoting life, not trying to manipulate life, then that's going to be very difficult for someone to grasp my information because I'm not classically trained. I mean, I read when I got that email from that troll, and he basically was just like parroting everything in the Wikipedia, and I'm like, And I went to Wikipedia just to see. I'm like, oh yeah, it says I'm from Vietnam. It says that my parents are in biotech, and I'm not trained in anything, and la 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 la. And I'm like, okay. And so, yeah, so I'm not going to get a lot of credibility because I'm outside of an institution that actively does take away life force from people trying to save lives. Yes, because of thermodynamics. But if you initially taught the population how to not only take on and promote growth, but know how to release it in a way that is promoting life on an indefinite basis. But then how do you nation build? How do you build an infrastructure of people? How do you have so much diversity? And so there is that balance. And so that's where we're going now, is with the whole Georgia Guidestones and guiding reproduction carefully, is saying, okay, we realize the mistakes we're making and we're dealing with it, we're facing it. We're bringing an evolved society, and either you evolve with us or you perish and you go out with the supernova. And yes, we're going to want to have 500 million people, which means that you better get your body up to par and up to snuff to the environment. And it's going to be very aggressive. And then we're going to figure out how we're going to guide reproduction carefully so we're not bearing children who are a drain not only on themselves, but also on the system. Because if you're a drain on yourself and you are taxing yourself and you're so unhappy and you're out there not taking care of business, then you're not obviously going to contribute to society in a balanced way. You're always going to be a drain, whether you're committing crimes or demonizing a person, place, or thing. I mean, there's so many reasons why that we have to guide reproduction carefully because of what we are producing in our society. And so I get what the architects are doing. I had to see it because I had to see it from the dualistic point of view. Remember, it's a trinity. You have both sides, the for and against. You have the agonist antibodies and the antagonist antibodies, the pluses and minuses, the Democrat Republicans, the Tories and the whatever. That's all in UK stuff. And it's always that dualistic thing, and one side's always in conflict with the other. And then there is a higher purpose between the two. It's the fact that one cannot exist without the other, but there's a ways to rise above and say, okay, we know the pluses and minuses are going to happen at the micro level, but should a person who is licensed be the one to determine how much life you get and how much life gets taken away? It's like you're giving your life to somebody who holds a license and says, okay, here, I give you my life. Okay? You're not determining your own worth. You're not determining your own growth and development. You're leaving your growth and your worth and your development in someone else's hands. And so that's why yesterday I had such an issue with a new person that came into my group who then wants to be like some kind of licensed practitioner to what? Promote the astragalus extract, to promote herbal remedies, to promote antibiotics, of which is already killing her culture as well as her society, and she's going to keep promoting that. And I was just livid in my head, like, what the heck? And so, when I'm trying to promote growth, and then there are people that I know actively are active on the J juice, then promoting the antithesis of, I'm just like, dude, you should not be in that position to determine how much, antibiotics or promoting antibiotics on people that need to actually see a doctor if they have an issue. because nobody on Facebook should be giving medical advice regarding taking away someone's life through antibiotics or extracts or any kind of medical stuff. I'm giving life to people. You eat food, you do the J juice, the salt will determine, salt is the energy to allow the virus driven blueprint on your DNA to determine, what is released and what is retained. And it should not be anyone out there determining what should be plus and minus on your body, or what should be minus on your body. And so anyways, so I get the bigger picture, and viruses are the agonists. They are the pluses in the environment, and the medical industry is the minus, and they're trying to balance. But we have a population that doesn't understand this, because you have to pay for this freaking education. You have to pay for it, and even then you don't get the full big picture. And so it takes someone that's outside of the system to see it for what it is. And so, yes, I've been actively getting rid of stuff. And it's most of this stuff that gets settled in my throat, my lungs, it comes out at night, because that's when the body is going through its releases and regeneration. And, my dog feels it too. She feels the highly electrified environment. I'm telling you, the fall is going to be insane. Already summer's insane. I mean, we have not winter, but we have rain that's panspermia, that's taking everything that's in the clouds from all of your community, and it's being released onto your society. And so you're getting more viral exposure to new variants. And so, yes, every rainstorm, people get colds and flus because they're viruses. Okay, they're viruses trying to evolve. And that's what happens every flu season. Why flu season? Because that's when it rains. That's when it's snowing. That's when it's cold. That's when things get transmitted easier because of the weather, because of people communing back and forth, because of close quarters. And so all viruses are their evolution. And so that's why the Vector Therapeutics exists, to give you that intermediary, and why it is they have on the inserts that these are potential risk factors, though not everyone's going to trigger them right now, but maybe in the future, because of the way they take care of their body. Okay? And so they know that in the vectors, there are agonist antibodies that also promote growth. That's why they are also promoted at childbirth, because some kids are not up to par to the level of the environment, because of the uterus has been suppressed of evolution. And so then when a child comes out into the environment, they need an intermediary like a Vector Therapeutic that, yes, if your predispositions have it to where you trigger those insert warnings, then the person could have died if they were left to the... So there's no way to know how a person would fare until after they decide to make whatever choice they make. And it's like playing Russian roulette. How do you know you're going to fare okay in an environment without an intermediary? And so there's no way to win when it comes to the medical industry. There's no freaking way to win. And so, when we have been bred to come into this world at major deficits, because they're using intermediaries to help us transition to new environments, and we celebrate diversity, which is no problem, but we do have a lot of people at different levels of evolution and deficits and different, strengths and weaknesses, and people do blame the system for that. But what's the alternative? You could have just died and been, in the womb just dead, or died from SIDS because you couldn't handle the environment. And so, that's why there's such, that's why America is such a first world, and why the West is a first world, because we knew how to use biotechnology in a way to promote growth and innovation. But yes, when you finally reach that tipping point where you have totally have maximized your innovation on long genetic lines that have major predispositions, then there has to be a reset. It's like saying, okay, this petri dish is now finally been maximized. Like when you have a petri dish full of little bacteria that you're manipulating, and all of a sudden, there's no more life to your bacteria anymore, because they just don't have any more in them to be able to innovate, because there's so many deficits in that petri dish. Well, eventually you're going to take another virus and put it on that petri dish, be like, okay, now everybody figured out the strongest ones will survive. And so, yes, when you put a virus in a petri dish, that is very evolutionary. Only the strongest ones are going to rise to the top and the weakest ones are going to disappear. And that's exactly what's going on right now. It's like we're in a huge petri dish. We've been in a petri dish for hundreds of years, okay? And now we have viruses that come in and level the playing field and bring us back to kind of zero, I guess. And then they have the new bodies to be able to figure out how best we can maintain, you know, the biochemistry and then gene edit and then figure out how best to extract the gifts and control the population to where it's not glitching and causing crimes and causing destruction and causing so many different things to warrant all the different agencies. So that's how you see the micro to the macro. Okay. And, you know, so at this point, yeah, you're seeing we're in a major reset. And that's why everybody's turning to the Bible, because the Bible was written by the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and all the different 17 influential families. I mean, it's a depiction of what happened way back in antiquity. But way back then is no different than today. We just think it's so different because we are very far removed from the history, except for what we see on Hollywood. But they knew that every so often there's going to be a reset, because how much can you procreate on a body that has so many deficits before it glitches, before it completely supernovas at some point? And so, yes, all the different human experimentation is about adding so much stress to a person, and it comes to, you know, to be very unethical and against human rights. But that's what all the different evil doctors did in the past, is they want to test so much stress on a person to see how much they can take. And then what kind of gifts could they produce out of them? Could they be a human robot? And you see about Bryce Taylor and Thanks for the Memories. And you hear about all the MK Ultra stuff back in the 1950s. Okay. But that was a major experimentation time. And then the 80s was rolling stuff out and really shaping population, shaping belief systems. And then you had, you know, because that was right after the 1960s. So you had the 1950s where the MK Ultra stuff, and yes, Operation Paperclip, and 60 Minutes did a whole thing about bringing scientists from World War II over here on American soil. Then you had Jimmy Carter, and other people are like, oh, we got to go and root them out. So there's, you know, so they're playing the two sides again, you know, even in politics back in the 1980s. And so, yeah, so the 1950s was all the experimentation. The 1960s was rolling out all the LSD and all the different charismatics to then go and monopolize their little tiny cult followings that you see on YouTube, right? YouTube and all their little influencers are no different than the charismatics back in the Jim Jones days, okay? And so the 1980s was then the rollout of all of it. And then you saw things like Jim Jones. Well, you saw things like, you know, some of these Indian gurus, swamis and whatever. You saw a lot of the fallout from the 1960s and the 1980s, you know, the serial killers and all of that. And so you're seeing how humans have been experimented on and used as a petri dish for many, many years. And you see how it manifests in the population. And so now you understand that viruses, yes, are the evolution, and then how biotech controls the evolution on bodies that are such at a deficit because we had to bring innovation out. Well, you know, we can demonize them, but now it's time to plant seeds in our friends and family who are practicing the things that they're practicing. They have the chance to reverse their belief systems. You realize if you have friends that have nurses' license, they have doctors' licenses, they have all these different licenses, they can actually go and reverse the belief systems out there. And they would have the credibility. They could say, oh my God, I have a license in the holistic and the allopathic and this, and I have been taking out organs, I've been taking out, scooping out hormones, I've been doing this, I've been doing that. And I realized that, you know what, you have to feel pain. You have to actually deal with the pain and support it correctly. It's all about piezoelectricity, transducers, transformers. It's, you know, everything's electric, but I also know that when you pay $100,000 to learn everything the opposite of what I'm doing, that it's not worth it to them. They're not willing to give up their association with the AMA. They're not willing to give up the $100,000, $200,000 a year they make. You know, 7 billion people who are willing to give you all of their rubles and all of their money so that way you can do something and give them a perceived, you know, outcome of a longevity. It's so lucrative. And that's why that's why those that get on the JJs for a minute and then they have access to all these different holistic therapies, they go back to the system like that because they know the money is so much in the ignorance of society. And so I get that too. And so that's why Julie Juice is the balancing force, is that, yeah, you can call me a virus, but virus is information. Bill Gates understood this. That's why Bill Gates understood viral protection, because yes, your computer has a specific data, a specific system that has to be regulated and has to be updated every so often. And if you get a virus that goes in and takes over and then completely decimates what you're doing, then that obviously doesn't work. Your computer has to be supported correctly to handle the updates. And so that's why your phone updates. That's why your computers update every so often. So that way it's able to be at the level of the environment, the computer environment. And so, who are these people? Ooh, some people are stupid. Give feedback to report. Zachariah. Spam. Ban Zachariah. Ban. Done. Okay. What did he comment on? Ah, that's what it was. So those who are critical. Oh yeah. All right, let's see. Hold on. What did I say on here? I want to read what I said. Electricity causes growth, and we're in a very highly electrical environment. My protocol also brings up predispositions because it is accelerating and energizing your body, no different than the electric transducers in viruses. But at least now you are using the food supply and the nutrients to back up the electrical forces. See, people don't understand that viruses are electric. They don't get it. And that's the ignorance of all of humanity. All viruses bring up people's predispositions, and it's how you react to them is relative to longevity. COVID-19 is going to accelerate your healing process, especially with all the variants in the environment. So do J juice and eat all food. And so, anyways, and so I said a bunch of stuff about Bill Gates and myself. And so this person's like, oh my God. But yeah, this is what I'm up against, is the fact that there's so much ignorance out there because of the medical holistic system, because of people who hold licenses who don't know any better. And they're promoting the negative side of the life side. And, how do you fight against that? There is no way. You got to let them just deal with all their predispositions, and they'll keep plying themselves with pills, powder supplements, and detoxes. They'll take out organs. They'll do radiation. And you can't stop it, but you can only drop seeds. And that's why I say it's very important that you guys know your power in dropping seeds, because there's nothing poisonous in the therapeutics. It's the fact that the bodies are not up to the level of the environment. And so if you do J juice and you get a therapeutic, J juice is going to help regulate the therapeutics and release the excess, because I got exposed to somebody who was recently therapeutized, and I had all the different symptoms and the ones that people know about as far as I haven't had my period since April. Okay. And I haven't been therapeutized, but I've been around those that have been therapeutized, which means that they are shedding the antibodies and the viruses that have been mutated. And then I breathed it in and my body adjusted to that level of evolution. And so I don't know. It's whatever. People are going to figure it out. They will figure it out. And there's nothing you can say or do to the way people believe stuff. And so I just drop information. Yeah, I'm gonna embrace both sides of the binary and the non-binary. And if you are binary and hate the non-binary, then you have an issue and you have discrimination issues, and I don't want to hear it. Because I'm telling you what, we were bred for specific purposes, and humans, we're either protecting, nation building, or seeding the population. And you could have one person encapsulate all three of those. You could have one person be a breeder, a protector, and a nation builder. And you can have one person who doesn't want to breed, who wants to be a nation builder and a protector. So, it's like there's no one person or two people that are more correct than somebody else. It's how you understand your environment. And this is so far above so many people's heads that it's almost like I'm speaking a freaking different language. But it is what it is. So anyways, all right, I'm going to go. Bye.